Hey, journeyers. Today I'm excited to be interviewing On. On is a queer Asian American person who is really passionate about national parks, and it's something I want to learn more about. So, thanks again for being on the show. You want to start off by introducing yourself and sharing about how many parks you've been to?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for the cool intro, Irene. I am super excited to be talking with you about this. I love this topic so much, so I could go on and on, but on and on. Huh. But okay, a little bit about me. So I am originally from Massachusetts. I grew up in the suburbs of Boston, and I've been out in the Bay Area for several years now. And since then, I've developed a lot of interests that I really love. So I love nature. I love hiking, painting, fishing, and gardening. And I really love dogs as well. So if you ever see a cute dog in your vicinity, feel free to let me know. I will be there in a jiffy. And so that's what I'm usually up to. And when I'm not doing any of those things, I love visiting national parks in the United States. And so far, I've been to 17 national parks out of, I think currently there's 62 US national parks now, I think. Yeah. So, that's a little bit about me.
Oh, exciting. I can't wait to hear about all of your favorite parks and pretty much what inspired you to get into it. So, maybe starting off, do you think you could share a little bit about what kind of made you decide to get into national parks?
Oh, yeah. So that, a few things really. I never really knew a lot about national parks until I had visited California for an internship back in 2015. And I heard some fellow interns were going on a weekend trip to Yosemite, and I heard it would be really fun. So I kind of signed up for that. And I don't really, I didn't, I'd never really heard of Yosemite that much before. And like, I think it really like took me by surprise just how beautiful it was. Seeing the view of El Cap and Half Dome was like so amazing, like, that really classic vista. And I just really wanted to know more after that. And I think later that year, I was visiting the Boston Museum of Science with a friend of mine, and there's kind of like an IMAX Omni theater there that plays scientific movies. Well, that day they happened to be playing a movie about national parks and about explorers doing different like hiking and climbing activities in national parks. So we went to go see it, and it was super beautiful and super inspirational. And we just saw these folks all packed in a Subaru. I think honestly, I think that movie was like a very good Subaru, like 40-minute Subaru commercial because they just like drove their Subaru to all these different national parks and were like looking like they had so much fun and it was so beautiful and you could see all these amazing different climates and different natural structures. So I just decided like, oh, well, if there's more of this in the country, I definitely want to see it for myself. So then after that, I kind of made it a goal to visit all US national parks in my lifetime.
Oh, that's such an awesome and fun goal. And I totally agree. Yosemite is really, really beautiful. Like, I'm really glad that kind of inspired you to try visiting as many parks as possible. You mentioned there's like 60 something of them. Like, how do you decide which park you go to or which park you're going to go to next on your list?
Yeah, honestly, like so a lot of it comes from I don't know what I can reach first, what I think of as like my low-hanging fruit. So, in the Bay Area, we're really lucky because there are so many parks like within driving distance, first of all. So since being out there, I've hit all seven national parks in California just because I love doing road trips as well. So that was kind of an obvious one. After that, I really try to go to national parks that are maybe an hour or two flight away from the Bay Area, or an hour, yeah, flight away from the Bay Area, usually when there's some sort of sale going on with like an airline or whatnot, and I'll make really a weekend road trip out of it. Um, but other than that, there a lot of the parks I hit, I think about five or six parks that I visited came from a cross country road trip that I did once with somebody else in a Mini Cooper. And it was when I moved actually from Boston to the Bay Area, and we needed to move my car and all my stuff. So I planned this whole like cross country national parks trip and really hit as many as I could. And that is the bulk of how I generally try to visit parks. But moving forward, I've started to figure out the types of parks that I really like to go to. So in the next couple of years, I've found out that I really love, like alpine biomes. So things like think of like something like Rocky Mountain National Park. Like lots of really tall trees, lots of high elevation lakes and mountains and things. So I do want to see a little bit more of that. So I would love to maybe go more to like towards Glacier National Park or the Pacific Northwest and see those types of landscapes again. And so like that's what I have my eyes set on for the next couple of years.
That sounds really fun. I've never taken a cross-country road trip in terms of driving literally from coast to coast, which that's what it sounds like you did. That's like from Boston all the way to California. That's like no joke. So that'd be pretty awesome. I did take a road trip to Yosemite when I was young with my family, and that was pretty cool. But yeah, I think when you're young, you just sit in the car and you don't really have to do any work. Versus like as an adult, you're like, oh, I need to get gas, I need to plan food, I need to plan where I'm staying. But that's really awesome that you planned all of that. Did it take you a long time to like map out your route and figure out like which parks to go to?
Yeah, absolutely. I actually it it was the summer after I'd graduated from undergrad, so I was very excited to start my adult life off with a bang. And it took me, I think, about 6 months to actually plan that particular trip. Like like on and off, doing a little bit of research here and there. And I think a really good tool actually that I like to use for planning road trips like this is called roadtrippers.com. So huge plug for that, I guess. And what I really like about that is you can like plug in your main points of interest. So, I basically plugged in Boston to the Bay Area, and along the way, it will tell you what's nearby, like the most optimal road to get to. So it'll tell you about like the really interesting tourist traps and the interesting restaurants or interesting things that you need to pull off the side of the road and see. And through that, I kind of like planned my trip there and just did a lot of research. I'm a huge planner, by the way. I love planning road trips. I love the logistics of it. And when you do a cross country road trip, you do have like a couple of options. Like they call it, I don't know if there's an official team for it, but there's the northern route and the southern route where you either go through the top half of the US or the bottom half. I picked the top half of the US just because I don't know, I was kind of interested in the parks that were near there. It takes you to some big parks like Grand Tetons and Yellowstone, and I was interested in seeing that. But I almost skipped Badlands National Park, which is in South Dakota, and because I just thought it wouldn't be interesting, or like I just didn't think South Dakota was worth stopping in for some reason. And the reason why I changed my mind actually is like I was at a wedding, and for some reason I was sat next to the like the I think like the deacon who presided over the wedding, or the preacher that presided over the wedding. And I was telling him about like, oh yeah, like over the summer I'm going to do this thing, but and I'm going to go across the northern part of the United States. And he was like, well, are you going to go to Badlands? And I was just like, no, like I'm not sure if I want to take the time. Like I kind of planned around it. And he was like, no, you have to go. I remember the time when I was at Badlands, I rode my motorcycle through it. It's the best place to like ride a motorcycle through. Like you must go. And so, yeah, and like this deacon was telling me all about this great motorcycle trip he had. So I did plan South Dakota into it. And actually Badlands is now my favorite national park. So I'm thankful for that opportunity to have kind of put that into my trip.
That's awesome that you have like a favorite national park and it was something you didn't even expect. Was there anything particular about this park that made it kind of really stand out in your mind?
Yeah, I think so Badlands, if you ever look up pictures of it, it really looks like Mars. Kind of. There's these really crazy rock formations that are really layered and really show how they've progressed over time, and it looks really ancient. And it's just something very otherworldly about it, and it's just so cool because it's in the middle of South Dakota. You wouldn't in the middle of grasslands, and so you wouldn't really expect that sort of thing there. So I just really love that. I thought it was just such a cool place to visit. I also think logistically, it's a really good national park to get to, especially when you do have a car. Oftentimes national parks can be inaccessible or crowded. So you think about like Yosemite or Zion, it's very hard to navigate the park and can kind of be stressful if you are trying to have a relaxing day. Um, Badlands National Park is actually right off a giant trucking interstate. Like it's actually part of the interstate, and you kind of like turn right off the interstate, and then you're in the park, and there's this loop like that you can drive into the park, and like that connects right back up to the interstate. So if you have a car, you really just got to turn off a highway. You're already there. There's tons of opportunities for you to like pull your car over and do a quick like 1 hour hike and see something interesting. And I just thought that was such a fun road trip experience, because it was like, it was me and my Mini Cooper like hitting up the park together. And it's just cool. It's like you feel like you're really experiencing the so like something like classic in America or something like that. It was just really fun. So I loved that.
Yeah, that sounds really fun. In terms of like, say somebody here in the Bay Area who's looking for a lesser known park or some kind of hidden gems or parks nearby in the area, what do you think you would recommend to them?
Yeah, absolutely. So a couple of things there. We're really lucky in the Bay Area because we're actually in a day's drive in. Ooh, sorry, my computer just went on its screensaver. Okay, we're back. So something that we're really lucky because Pinnacles National Park is actually right in the Bay Area. It's more in like the Hollister-Gilroy area, which if you're familiar with the Bay Area, it's only a couple hours drive away. And I would first recommend that. I think it might be one of the second smallest national park, I'm going to say. Don't quote me on that, but it's pretty small, so I would definitely consider it a hidden gem. But it is so cool because there are some really unique aspects of it that are really accessible to a day hiker. So depending on which entrance you go into, I mean, there's caves, that's big spoiler alert, accessible at both of at the east or western entrance. Yeah, you can go, and if you have a flashlight, you can just honestly walk into a cave and hike through a cave, and it's super dark. It's like the darkest thing ever. And sometimes there's bats in the cave. The bats tend to live in the cave and whatnot. So I've never seen a bat, but I guess it's pretty cool to visit a bat's habitat. And I would really recommend that to somebody, because I just how often do you get to visit a cave? Just casually walk into one as a hiker. So, in terms of national parks, I would really recommend that. But also, I know I'm a big national park enthusiast and I identify as that, but there are so many state parks in California as well, or, other county parks. A couple that I can think of, which I think that this one is a county park. Have you ever heard of Point Lobos down near Monterey? I don't know if that counts as Bay Area, but
I mean, I guess that might. I mean, it's so close to the Bay Area. As long as you have a car and you can drive an hour and 45 minutes. I have been there actually. It's very beautiful and really good ocean views. So
yeah, I
maybe.
love it. It's so beautiful. It's where I take anybody that's visiting California for the first time, and I want to show them something unique they haven't seen before. So I do really recommend that. I recommend there's this hike that brings you right on the rocky coastline, and there's oftentimes marine biologists that are volunteering there who with telescopes that will show you the wildlife, so the sea lions and the sea otters and whatnot, and they're usually out, so it's really nice to kind of see those little cuties hanging out in the water. And also the cypress groves are really beautiful as well. I just feel like cypress trees, they're so interesting, and I don't think you get to see them a lot. So I would really recommend that. I think that that's probably one of the favorites, but more, I guess, a little bit more accessible to the Bay Area specifically there is a park called Hubbard Park that I think is in Woodside. So, it's basically right off the 280. And, what I really like about that is that I live in South Bay and I have a lot of friends in San Francisco. So I can meet up. That's basically a meetup point in the middle for us. We park our cars. There's tons of parking, which I really like. And you really feel like you're kind of out of the city when you go there. Like, there's really beautiful tall trees. It's quiet. There's tons of trails to explore, and it's just like a good place to sort of unplug and get a little bit of exercise in. And I feel like not a lot of people know about Hubbard Park actually. So I would recommend it if you're looking for a good hike and don't have a lot of time to drive away from the Bay Area. I would say head there. I think it's worth a visit.
Yeah, I don't even know if I've been there before. I've been to like a lot of places in the Bay Area, and oftentimes I forget. I'll be like, "Have I been there?" For a second, I was even like, "Have I been to Point Lobos?" And I was like, "Yeah, I have been to Point Lobos." And I agree with you about the wildlife stuff because I remember when I went there before, they even have like free docent tours at like certain times of the day, and they like come walk with you in a small group and point out different trees, like different just like animal houses and stuff, like the little mice houses things, little, I'm not sure, like little,
Burrows?
yeah,
Maybe
like
there's like
burrows.
burrows. Yeah.
And then all the animals on the rocks, like all the sea life, like I thought it was really cool. But yeah, Hubbard Park, I don't even know if I've been there, so that's awesome. And I agree with you about Pinnacles as well. Like Pinnacles is a really beautiful park, and it's actually pretty strenuous too. Like it's a good workout. um,
Yeah,
yeah.
absolutely. There are some trails there that like you can do trail running there too. Not that I ever have, but I know people have. And yeah, I could see that's a good calf workout, I think.
Yeah. In terms of parks and just going to the different ones, like, what would you say is like the most difficult thing about getting to a park? Is it like the expenses? I know parks are pretty, some of them like Yosemite that you mentioned earlier can get pretty crowded. Like, what do you think are maybe some of the barriers to going to a park, and kind of what would you do, or what do you do to kind of resolve those?
Yeah, absolutely. Personally, for me, I'll talk about a couple of barriers, and I think that there are ways around them or to sort of mitigate that. But yeah, for me, I am such a planner. I do love to have optimal trips. So I don't. I would say a barrier for me is oftentimes crowds and like navigating crowds to get into parks. Oftentimes, like if you go to really popular parks at peak season, there will be lines outside the gate, and like you'll need to wait for some cars to leave before your car can go in. And then once you are within the confines of the park, to get to the trailhead, that can be a little bit difficult actually, because parking is a big issue. Like there shouldn't be huge parking lots in like within parks. So oftentimes the main parking is in the visitor center, and the way to get to the trailhead to see the things you want to see, a recommended way is to take a park shuttle. And honestly, this is the best way to do it anyways. It's the most efficient. Like it's gonna get you there. I think just a bit of a challenge is you need to have some patience because there are only so many park shuttles that the National Park Service has available to them that they're able to maintain. So oftentimes you may be waiting in kind of a long line to get put onto a shuttle and then eventually, make it to your destination. Like the shuttles, they tend to come by like every 15 minutes, so it's not like you're going to be stranded there forever. But just off, like there's a lot of people at the parks that are enthusiastic, so a few buses might need to come by before you get on a bus, and that's totally okay. But like, so just having a little bit of patience and working with the park and working with their shuttle schedule is something that I really recommend. Or trying to get to the park early so you can hit the trails early is a really good idea. Or also uh, visiting a park on its off season as well. Obviously for a lot of parks, peak season might be in the summer, but if you're willing to go a little bit later in the fall or the spring, I think that you'll still see a lot of beautiful things and maybe less crowds at the end of the day. So I would really kind of recommend that to as the US parks are, they're just really popular, like, and everybody does want to enjoy and access the land. So you got to be willing to take your turn and plan around it.
Mhm.
I would say another thing, when I think about maybe barriers to entry of when you think about parks is, I think sometimes there might be an idea that parks are inaccessible if due to physical accessibility. If you are differently abled, or if you are not somebody who identifies as an athletic, like day hiker, or a backpacker or something, that the park isn't for you, or it's not worth your time to go and visit these sites. I would say sometimes I'm afraid of that too. Like, I'm afraid of these longer hikes and things. But I think that these parks can be accessible, and they do have the intent to be enjoyed by everybody. So some parks, I would say, like, researching ahead of time, like, what are the accessible trails for you? Like, some trails are really well maintained, have a lot of educational information, and really show you a lot of, like, the best hits of what that area has to offer in terms of plant life or natural structures. But it might be through a tour. Or it might be on more of a paved walkway, or it might be through a museum exhibit. And somebody who might not feel as confident as a hiker, I would really encourage them to sort of like explore those options, because I've seen a lot of them and I've really enjoyed them a lot. I would think actually a very accessible national park that I think that people of all ages or of a lot of levels of ability would enjoy is the Grand Canyon in Arizona. It's amazing. There is a really accessible paved walkway through around a lot of it on the south rim, specifically where I visited. And you can see everything, because it's the Grand Canyon. It's a hole in the ground, like you can access it. And there are also so many really well maintained exhibits throughout the entire walk, so you can really learn about the history of the area or the geological background of it. And there are a lot of museum exhibits as well, so you can walk into a museum and hear a talk from a ranger. And there, besides going on huge, crazy half dome hikes and whatnot, there are a lot of ways that you can like really enjoy a park and the atmosphere it has.
That's awesome. That's great to hear. They make parks as accessible as possible. And I didn't even know that they had a walkway at the Grand Canyon that was like, has like all these things that you can see alongside. I don't even remember if I went to the Grand Canyon. I may have gone to the Grand Canyon with my family on that same trip we went to Yellowstone. I don't know. I was kind of young, and when you're young, you don't always pay attention to what your parents are doing. And you're just kind of like, okay, I'm here. I'm being like taken along. That's awesome. I do feel pretty inspired to go check out some more parks, actually. I think it's something that you definitely have to plan for, because if it's not in like a day's trip away, it is, it feels like, oh, there's so many barriers. Like, I need to do this. I need to like find a place to stay. I need to figure out my drive. But yeah, I need to make time for it. One thing that you mentioned to me before is you have a little patch board that you kind of collect from different parks that you've been to. Do you want to show it off a little bit and tell us a little more about it?
Yeah, absolutely. Are you talking about this patch board here? So right now I'm holding up my collection of national parks passes. I'm gonna try to get it into the camera's view. And so ever since I went to my first park, Yosemite, I've bought a patch at every single park that I visited, and it's just like kind of like my little souvenir thing that I really like a lot. I think that this is kind of really fun. So I'll point out a few of my favorites. My favorite ones tend to be like the interestingly shaped ones. So I think actually my favorite one is right here. So right now I'm pointing to the Grand Teton one that I got from Wyoming. And what it looks like is it's shaped like a backpack. And it says Grand Teton National Park on it. And on the backpack, there's a scene of a hiker who is looking at some mountains in a lake. And so I think it's fun that it's a backpack.
So meta. It's like
very, very meta, definitely. And then another one that I really like is Badlands National Park in South Dakota. It's shaped like an arrowhead, and I think that is to kind of honor a lot of the history that is in that area and the folks that have lived there for quite a long time. And I really love the history there. I do, and I think it just makes for a cool patch too, to be honest. What's another one I'm a big fan of? Let's see. I think here it's not interestingly shaped, but I do like this Yellowstone patch right here. And so it's circular and it says Yellowstone, world's first national park. I do think Yellowstone was the first U.S. national park, and it's got a picture of Old Faithful on it, which is the geyser that does periodically go off to some like predictable degree. So that's what makes it really interesting. And it also has a little embroidered bison on it. And bison are my favorite animals because I saw them at Yellowstone and I thought that they were like such funny looking guys. I love bison, I gotta say. Like they're like hilarious furry cars. If I had to describe them as anything, they're huge, they're massive. I don't want to get anywhere near a bison, but so I saw the bison from like 300 yards away. Like I saw a herd of them and I just thought that was so cool. So I wanted to get a patch with a bison on it so I could remember that I spotted bison for the first time at Yellowstone.
That's
So,
awesome.
yeah. But yeah, there's a whole patch board here.
Nice. Soon you'll have a bigger collection when you end up visiting all the national parks. That's so cool.
You know, I'm looking forward to it. It's like my prized possession, my little patch board.
Nice, nice. I guess some other things that people might be wondering is like, how much does it usually cost to go to a national park? And like, how does it work? Do you need to like reserve ahead of time, or how does
Yeah.
all?
Yeah. So you usually, for most national parks, you do not have to reserve ahead of time. Like honestly, right now we're going through a period where we're dealing with COVID-19. So I will say this. I have not checked the policies for park entrance since, but normally you don't have to reserve going into a park ahead of time for entrance. And I really love that policy because the U.S. national parks, they were started to really make the land accessible for the people, and like a lot of the spirit of the parks is like this is the American people's land, and like you should be able to enjoy this and experience its beauty, because it's basically it's your right to. So you usually don't really need a reservation unless you are looking to get a campsite or whatnot, and usually those are in pretty high demand. So there's that. In terms of cost for the parks, there's a few different ways that this pricing works, and I kind of looked this up a little bit. If you are, so say you just want to visit a park once, and if you're bringing a car, usually the entrance fee is about $25 to $30 per vehicle, and so you just pay that per vehicle, and then you'll get a sticker to put on your car. And if you are walking in on foot, like walking or biking in through the entrance gate, it's usually about $5 to $7 per person, I want to say. And something that's good about that entrance is, once you do get your receipt that's timestamped saying that you paid that, it is good for the next 7 days. So if you are looking to visit a park repeatedly over a trip, you just have to pay once, and you're good to go. Um, there is another way to get admission to national parks, though, and that is the annual Parks Pass, which I oftentimes subscribe to. The default one is called the America the Beautiful Pass, and how it works to get a pass is you either buy the pass online or you buy it from a federal recreation site that sells the passes, and these passes are $80. They are good for 12 months since the day that you buy it, or like the month that you buy it. And I'll show mine here. So here's the pass. What I'm showing here is it kind of looks like a little plastic credit card, and you sign the back of it to let rangers know that it's yours. And the way it works is what you do is, when you can either show a ranger your pass when you go through the park gate, and they'll be able to verify that you have paid the fee. Or if you happen to enter and there's no ranger there to check your pass, it comes with a little plastic holder that you can stick on your rear view mirror. So rangers will know that, oh, this car is associated with an America the Beautiful pass. So that I really recommend it because if you are planning on visiting multiple parks in a year, the $80 really does pay for itself, and it just makes it so much easier. So you always know that you don't need to pack cash or a credit card or anything like that if you're looking to go on a hike. Um, so I really recommend it. Some other options that I do want to call out here that do make the parks even more accessible are, for there was a program that was started, I think, under the Obama administration, under the Get Up and Move type of initiative, that passes are free for all U.S. fourth graders, and a fourth grader and their family can enter the park for that year for free. So that's really cool. There are also discounts for like seniors, military, and veterans. For example, seniors are eligible to buy a lifetime pass once they do meet the requirements. So there are a lot of options for getting to a park. If you're thinking about what to do to get admission.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think this is going to be really helpful for people. I love that they're making the parks as accessible as possible, giving discounts for maybe like marginalized groups or groups that may be lower income or anything like that. That's awesome. If people kind of want to learn more about parks or park life or like what are some resources you might recommend people check out?
Yeah, absolutely. A few things. So if anybody wants to learn about park life in general, I recommend honestly visiting the National Parks government website, so nps.gov. If you want to learn about a specific park or are trying to plan a visit there, it has the most up-to-date information about the weather conditions at the park, any road closures, any programs that you want to get a heads up on. So that is a really great way to learn about parks. And I'll also actually kind of plug here that the best way to learn about a park once you have visited, which I think that not everybody is aware of, is so whenever I visit a park and I'm there, when I've gotten there, I actually go straight to the visitor center first. And I do that for a couple of reasons. I always go to talk to the ranger section, and like I get a map of the park so I can know where all the trails are, and then I get a lot of advice from that ranger on what is the weather like what's in season, and what they recommend for me as a visitor to really go see or be mindful of. So just talking to a ranger who knows a lot about the park is honestly is a very good way to do that. Also, once you are at the park and at the visitor centers always have a museum exhibit that tells you a lot about the plant life, the animal life, or the natural formations in the park. And I would also really recommend watching the documentary that's usually there. So usually there is a small theater room at all these visitor centers, and they'll regularly air throughout the day about a 20-minute documentary about the park's history and whatnot. I think it's actually very informative. I know a lot of people, when they get to a park, are really excited to get to the hike and get on the trail, but I think actually watching the video beforehand really informs the rest of your trip and makes it really fun. So that's just learning about parks in general. To learn a little bit more about parks and how to support it in any political climate, another thing I would sort of recommend is something I'm a big fan of called the Alternative National Parks Service. And so that can be found at altnps.org. And this is an organization that's really meant to stand up for the National Park Service to help protect and preserve the environment for future generations. And that really is their main mission. And the way that they do this is they really just spread awareness. They put together content about the latest environmental news, any sorts of programs that they're trying to get sponsored to help fund the parks, or anything that we really need to be mindful of as we do try to protect our precious natural resources for a long time and really keep those going. So I really recommend, altnps.org. And if you have if you want to keep learning more and want to learn more about me as a person, if you are so inclined, I would be so flattered. You can visit my personal website at onqwin.com. So it's spelled a little bit interestingly, ANQNGUYEN.com. And you can kind of learn a little bit more about me if you enjoyed listening to my ramblings about national parks.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love going to the visitor centers as well when I go to a park. I love chatting with the rangers there. I love getting a map too, because sometimes your phone is just not doing a great job when there's not a lot of reception. So yeah, I love to pick up a map too, just to like feel more confident about where I'm going. Use the restroom or refill my water bottle because I love to bring like a reusable water bottle around and refill it and try to be living a low waste lifestyle. So, and yeah, I've seen that alt NPS site before. I think it's super cool. People are able to actually air out their own personal opinions as opposed to like, oh, I'm representing this giant organization that I'm part of, and really express like their feelings about stuff. So I think it's super cool.
Yeah,
And thanks for sharing your
absolutely.
website.
Thanks. I'm a supporter. I just also want to show back to my patch board. I do actually have a patch from Alt NPS. Let me put it in front of it's right here. I ordered it off their official site. So I'm a supporter of them. They're in my patch board.
Well,
I'm very proud of the patch board.
yeah, it's awesome. Maybe I can get a photo of it later and put it on or link it somewhere.
Awesome.
Cool. Awesome. Well, thanks again for being on the show and sharing your story about your passion with national parks. I can't wait to hear a little bit more about your future adventures, or maybe we can do another episode after you're all done visiting every single park.
Absolutely. I would love that.
Cool, cool. Well, signing off as always. Happy to have you all here. Let's take a deep breath in together. Deep breath out. Have a good rest of your day, everyone. Take care.
Thank you.